started. Our top focus tonight on Gravitas is a new terror axis taking shape with an alliance between two terror groups in Pakistan, with sources suggesting that the Lashkar-e-Taiba and the Islamic State Khorasan province have joined forces under the supervision of Pakistan's ISI. What would this new terror partnership mean for India? We are decoding all of that for you in just a bit. Also on the show for you tonight, 2 years since the Israel-Hamas war started on this day. Where do things stand right now? On Gravitas Snapshot, we are getting you the story of the Hamas chief negotiator, one of the most powerful surviving faces of Hamas. All this and more coming up. This week, the Afghan foreign minister will be visiting India, marking the first high-level trip by a Taliban leader to New Delhi since the group took power in 2021. And India is expected to press Afghanistan for cooperation on a range of issues, such as regional security, strategic issues. But the visit also coming at a tense moment, as reports have emerged of an unholy alliance between two terror groups in Pakistan. Intel sources to WION suggesting that the Lashkar-e-Taiba and the Islamic State Khorasan province have joined forces under the supervision of Pakistan's ISI in Balochistan. This new terror partnership could have serious implications for Jammu and Kashmir, raising fresh security concerns for India. Photographs accessed by WION confirming that these two networks are now coordinating operations under the direct patronage of Pakistan's notorious spy agency. ISKP, long denounced as Daesh and even rejected by the Afghan Taliban as un-Islamic, is now being secretly repurposed by Pakistan's military to target Baloch nationalists as well as Taliban factions that defy Islamabad's control. And reports from ISKP's propaganda magazine also indicating an expressed intent to expand operations into Kashmir, a move that appears both coordinated as well as encouraged by Pakistan's deep state. Adding to the concern are reports that Pakistan is facilitating cooperation between the Lashkar-e-Taiba and the ISKP and using the Lashkar-e-Taiba's logistical networks to bolster ISKP's terror capabilities. This emerging coalition of these terror groups not only intensifying threats to Afghanistan and Balochistan, but also showing Pakistan Army's intent to reignite militancy in Jammu and Kashmir, destabilize regional peace, all under the classic Pakistan military guise of plausible deniability. A recently surfaced photo also showing ISKP's Balochistan coordinator handing over a pistol to senior Lashkar-e-Taiba commander Rana Mohammad Ashfaq. Ashfaq is the current head, the Nazim-e-Ala of the Lashkar-e-Taiba, and oversees the group's expansion across Pakistan. In fact, his work includes setting up new markas, which basically means indoctrination and training hubs. He's also instrumental in forging operational links with other terror entities of different sects. Mengal, meanwhile, is the son of former Balochistan caretaker Chief Minister Nasir Mengal and has long been a key asset of the Pakistan spy agency. For over a decade, in fact, Mengal has commanded a private death squad targeting Baloch nationalists. And since 2015, Mengal also acted as the ISKP's primary facilitator in Balochistan, arranging safe houses, funding arms supplies. His role was also mentioned in a 2015 report issued by Pakistan's own investigative agencies. By 2018, the ISKP, with ISI's direct financial and logistical backing, had established two main operational bases in Mastung and Khuzdar districts. Mengal was appointed as the camp in charge, responsible for provisioning weapons and funds. And his death squad, active since 2010, also continued eliminating the Baloch rebels on ISI's orders. Mengal's deep ties with Pakistan's political elite are no secret. A 2023 photograph showed him alongside President Asif Ali Zardari, which goes on to show the immunity and the clout that he enjoys within Islamabad's establishment following the Taliban's rise to power in Afghanistan. ISI revamped ISKP's presence in Balochistan. The Mastung camp was, in fact, tasked with attacking Baloch insurgents under Mengal's supervision, while the Khuzdar camp handled cross-border terror missions in Afghanistan. Arms and funds flowed to both sides through ISI intermediaries, and then in March this year, Baloch fighters mounted a massive strike on ISKP's Mastung facility, killing about 30. But ISI could not let it go. Retaliating swiftly, ISI instructed the Lashkar-e-Taiba to step in. And by June 2025, the LET chief, Rana Muhammad Ashfaq, arrived in Balochistan, followed by the LET deputy, Saifullah Kasuri, who convened a meeting urging the jihad against Baloch separatists and vowed to eliminate anti-Pakistan forces from the province. The newly emerged picture of Mengal and Ashfaq together confirming formal coordination between the Lashkar-e-Taiba and the ISKP. And analysts believe the partnership aims to target both Baloch insurgents as well as Taliban factions in Afghanistan, executing ISI's regional agenda. And the Lashkar-e-Taiba's presence in Balochistan is not exactly new, of course. It's Markaz Taqwa in Quetta, led by the Afghan war veteran Saqib Hussain, has been operational for years now. And between 2002 and 2009, Lashkar also maintained a training camp in the region, the same facility where Indian Mujahideen co-founder received weapons training in 2006. It's now believed that the Lashkar might begin deploying its fighters alongside the ISKP in operations against the Baloch insurgents, mirroring the group's earlier collaboration with the Al-Qaeda during the Afghan jihad. And this LET-ISKP convergence under ISI supervision, signaling a rather dangerous transformation in Pakistan's terror ecosystem, one where ideologically distinct groups are merging into a single state-backed apparatus to serve Islamabad's geopolitical and sectarian objectives across the region. And for India, this is a worrying development. Intelligence indicating that the ISKP and LET are now working together with an eye on expanding attacks into Kashmir. And this emerging coalition not only threatens Afghanistan and Balochistan, but also signals a renewed attempt to try and destabilize Jammu and Kashmir, reinforcing Pakistan's use of terrorism as a state policy. And as this dangerous alliance takes shape, the collaboration between the Lashkar-e-Taiba and the ISKP under the ISI supervision just shows how proxy networks continue to be used by Pakistan to further its strategic objectives. All eyes will be on Afghan Foreign Minister's India visit, and these issues are expected to come up in the talks. Needless to say, WION will be closely monitoring those developments. It has been exactly 2 years since the Gaza war started. October 7, 2023 was the date. And since then, over 67,000 lives have been lost. The enclave is filled with death and utter destruction. It's a shadow of its former self. More than 2 million Gazans living in the midst of that humanitarian crisis, out of shelter, out of food, continuously displaced from one end to the other amid the Israeli strikes and warnings. In neighboring Egypt, meanwhile, mediators from both Hamas and Israel are set to hold another round of indirect talks aimed at ending that war, based on a plan backed by US President Donald Trump. And the Egyptian state-linked media reporting that the first round of talks on Monday concluded in a positive atmosphere. Qatar's foreign ministry spokesperson said many details of Trump's Gaza plan need to be worked out, while Hamas said it is attempting to overcome any kind of obstacles in implementing the Trump-backed plan to end the war. Listen to this.
The movement's delegation, participating in the current negotiations in Egypt, seeks to overcome all obstacles to achieving an agreement that meets the aspirations of our people and our people in Gaza.
But amid all of this, the war in Gaza continues. Israeli tanks, boats, jets, allegedly pounded parts of Gaza today. Residents in Khan Yunis in southern Gaza and Gaza City in the north reported heavy bombing from tanks and planes in the early hours. Displaced Gazans are hoping that the talks in Egypt finally lead to a ceasefire.
Today is October 7th. It's been 2 years that we are living in fear, horror, displacement, and destruction. We are living a difficult life in bitterness and misery. We are hoping with these new negotiations to reach a ceasefire and a final end to the war. We are exhausted from this journey, and it has been 2 very difficult years for us.
And on the other side, Israelis paused to the memorial sirens heard across various parts of the country, marking the 2nd anniversary of the October 7 attacks. Like many Gazans, Israelis are also demanding for the war to end.
Sound of the guns that we hear right now, we don't understand it. We want that the peace will stop, the fire will stop, so all the hostages will come back. And to finish this that all the hostages will come back and will close this event.
And earlier today in Jerusalem, families of hostages and supporters protested outside the residence of the Israeli Prime Minister, calling for the release of all the hostages. While in Indonesia, hundreds of pro-Palestine protesters rallied outside the US Embassy in Jakarta, demonstrating against American support for Israel and the ongoing violence in Gaza. Similar scenes also witnessed in Sydney, where a small group of supporters gathered to attend a rally in support for the people of Gaza.
Genocidal murderous.
And as the war is now in the 3rd year, 2 years since the war started, tensions in West Asia continue to simmer. In an interview, in fact, the Israeli Prime Minister has alleged that Iran is currently developing intercontinental ballistic missiles which could potentially reach major cities on its east coast, like Washington, D.C., New York, Boston, Miami. Netanyahu claiming that Iran's ballistic missiles have a potential range of nearly 8,000 kilometers, and with another 3,000 kilometers, the entire U.S. East Coast is within its target range. Within Israel, Netanyahu's unpopularity continues to be in the focus. An Israeli poll stating that 64% of Israelis believe Netanyahu should bear responsibility for the October 7 attack and resign. As international and domestic pressure continues to mount, all eyes remain on the Gaza talks in Egypt. He is the man who has survived wars, airstrikes, assassination attempts. And today, Khalil al-Hayya stands as one of the most powerful surviving faces of Hamas. Just last month, the 64-year-old escaped an Israeli air raid in Doha that targeted the group's senior leadership. And weeks later, he re-emerged in Egypt's Sharm el-Sheikh, leading Hamas in indirect talks with Israeli negotiators over a new Gaza peace plan backed by US President Donald Trump. Once a local leader in Gaza, he has evolved into Hamas's chief negotiator, a man whose influence has grown sharply as others around him have died in Israeli strikes. With the deaths of Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran and Yahya Sinwar in Gaza, al-Hayya has effectively become the group's most prominent voice abroad. Based in Qatar, he is part of a 5-member council leading Hamas since Yahya Sinwar's death last year. Born and raised in the Gaza Strip, he joined the Muslim Brotherhood in the early 1980s, the same ideological movement that led to the formation of Hamas in 1987. And for decades, he operated as a hardline political figure inside Gaza, enduring multiple Israeli detentions. But the price of his leadership has been personal. His family home in Gaza City's neighborhood was hit in a 2007 Israeli airstrike, killing several relatives. A year later, his son Hamza died in another strike. In 2014, his eldest son, along with Osama's wife and 3 of their children, were killed when their house was bombed during another Gaza war. Despite personal losses, al-Hayya has continued to rise within the Hamas hierarchy. In 2014, he played a central role in ceasefire negotiations that temporarily ended that year's war with Israel. And today, he's again at the center of the efforts to secure a truce. Al-Hayya is known to maintain close ties with Iran, and he even accompanied Ismail Haniyeh to Tehran in July last year, shortly before Haniyeh was assassinated. And beyond the ceasefire diplomacy, al-Hayya has also been involved in Hamas's relations across the Arab world. In 2022, he led a delegation to Damascus to rebuild ties with former Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, relations that had fractured a decade earlier during Syria's civil war. And as he returns to the negotiating table, one question remains: can he, along with other mediators, broker peace and bring an end to this war? The focal point in the Russia-Ukraine war, as the debate over long-range weapons and their potential to reshape the conflict has reached new heights. Ukraine's president has hinted at a growing range of strike capabilities, revealing that Kiev has not only been deploying drones, but also domestically produced missiles in recent attacks deep inside Russian territory.
In recent days, Ukraine has been using exclusively Ukrainian products, not just drones. And from those strikes, I think people can understand, from the fragments that are on social networks, where drones were used and where non-drones were used.
You heard that. But the question then is, how deep is the war really going to get? And will these long-range weapons actually lead to further escalation in the war? The discussion has gained fresh momentum after US President Donald Trump expressed cautious concern about the possibility of supplying Ukraine with the Tomahawk missiles. In fact, he says he wants to understand exactly how they will be used before giving the green light. With Tomahawks having a range of 2,500 kilometers, the Kremlin sees the prospect of these missiles reaching Moscow itself. President Putin has warned that any such move could irreparably damage the US-Russia relations. Meanwhile, Zelensky is batting with more advanced weaponry, reports suggesting Kiev may have started using a new class. The long-range cruise missiles, the Flamingo, is Ukraine's new long-range subsonic cruise missile. The range and size on paper making it one of the largest and longest range in its class. The missile, which reportedly underwent successful testing in recent months, has a range of 3,000 kilometers, which enables it to hit deep into Russia, beyond the Ural Mountains, and into the Asian parts of Russia. And the stakes are higher than ever at this point. President Zelensky recently revealing shocking information that over 100,000 foreign-made parts, including British microchips, were found in Russian missiles and drones used in the deadly attacks on Ukraine. And this claim bringing new pressure for stronger sanctions. It has also put the spotlight on these components from Western countries like Germany. In fact, and the US, which Zelensky claims to be part of Russian weaponry. As Russia continues its deadly drone barrage on Ukraine, the war is showing no signs of slowing down. The recent developments are a critical moment in the war. As long-range weapons become the new norm, the question still is the Russia-Ukraine war about to escalate further? What happens when a president deploys military forces against his own citizens? That's the question Americans are asking today amid a growing showdown between President Donald Trump and state governments. And his plan to deploy National Guard troops to parts like Portland and Chicago has sparked legal as well as political battles. But more importantly, it's also triggered a series of questions. Questions about the limits of presidential power in the United States overall, because this is not just a domestic debate. It's about the rule of law in a democracy and the stability of its institutions as well. These are issues that the world has been monitoring closely. And Donald Trump has framed these deployments as necessary to combat what he calls lawlessness, to support immigration, and to support customs enforcement agents carrying out his immigration agenda. State and local officials, however, see it quite differently. They have called these moves unnecessary and a clear overreach of federal authority. In Illinois and Chicago, the state and city have filed lawsuits aimed at stopping the federalization of their National Guard troops, calling the plan illegal, dangerous, and unconstitutional. A coalition of several cities from across the country filed a court brief late Monday, supporting Oregon's attempt to block National Guard soldiers from being used in U.S. cities. The brief also claimed that Trump had plans to send them to 19 more states. Various leaders say they were gravely concerned that any protest, real or perceived, will actually result in another unnecessary deployment of the military. Cities signing on to support Oregon include Boston, Denver, Seattle, Chicago. A federal judge did not block the deployments for now, but has given the administration a deadline to explain why they should be allowed to proceed. Meanwhile, in Oregon, a Trump-appointed federal judge temporarily blocked the president's efforts to send National Guard troops to Portland. In response, the White House has asked an appeals court to pause that order, keeping the battle moving through the courts. Over the weekend, in fact, Trump authorized 300 Illinois National Guard members to deploy to Chicago to protect federal officers and assets, while the Texas governor offered 400 of his state's troops at the president's discretion. Reports have said that Texas Guard troops have already been mobilized and were seen landing in Indiana, though it remains unclear exactly what role they will be playing once in Chicago. And as the legal battles unfolded, Trump openly suggested he might invoke the Insurrection Act, a centuries-old law dating back to 1792, to deploy military forces domestically in limited circumstances, even without a state's consent. And he told reporters in the Oval Office, I'm quoting, "We have an Insurrection Act for a reason. If I had to enact it, I would do that," quote unquote. Now, the Democratic leaders have disputed the president's claims of rising violence. They have said that the crime numbers in some cities are down. The Illinois governor, in fact, has accused the federal administration of creating a premeditated escalation of violence in order to justify invoking the emergency powers. He said, and I'm quoting here, "The Trump administration is following a playbook. Cause chaos, create fear and confusion, make it seem like peaceful protesters are a mob, all to create a pretext for sending the military into our city," quote unquote. Despite the controversy, the judge, who was appointed by former President Joe Biden, declined to issue an immediate restraining order in Illinois and set a hearing for Thursday, asking the government to provide more information about the deployments. The state attorney general and Chicago's legal counsel have accused Donald Trump of using the military to punish his political enemies. They said that no American should live under the threat of occupation simply because their local leaders are out of favor with the president. Meanwhile, in Portland, the district judge, a Trump appointee, wrote that the president's claims were simply untethered to the facts and said that the U.S. is a nation of constitutional law, not martial law, quote unquote. The White House, meanwhile, is appealing this ruling. The controversy coming as the Trump administration faces a mounting legal pushback, not just from Illinois and Oregon, but from other states as well. California, for example, had filed a legal suit early this year itself after federal troops were sent to Los Angeles to quell the protests related to immigration crackdown, a case that continues to wind its way through the courts. Homeland Security Secretary, meanwhile, has defended the plan to send troops to Chicago, calling the city a war zone. But public opinion appears skeptical. According to a recent CBS poll, 58% of Americans oppose deploying the National Guard. 58%. Deploying the Guard to U.S. cities in this way. But even as the showdown between Trump and state governments continues, it may become a test case for the entire country, raising important questions like how far can a U.S. president really go when it comes to deploying military forces on his own soil? Are these moves truly about protecting citizens? Or are they an overreach of federal power? And perhaps most importantly, how will the world view American democracy if domestic military deployments become a political tool in a way? Before we move on any further, a quick look at what else is lined up for you on the show tonight. Is diet soda safe for you? We are telling you what a new study says. This is coming up in just a bit. Also telling you about a new trade clash over pasta. We're telling you what's cooking and why things are getting heated. All this and more coming up. What started out as a mystery illness in Madhya Pradesh has exploded into a full-scale public health emergency. The death toll has now climbed to 20 children, including a baby as young as 18 months old. And now a legal battle is also unfolding. A public interest litigation has been filed in the Supreme Court, demanding an independent and court-monitored probe into the tragic deaths linked to a killer cough syrup that was supposed to heal and not kill infants. At the center of this growing scandal is a cough syrup manufactured by Streisand Pharmaceuticals in Tamil Nadu. Investigations revealing that prescribed cough syrups, like this one, were contaminated with a deadly industrial chemical used in products like brake fluid and glue. On October 2nd, the Tamil Nadu Drug Control Authorities declared that this syrup sample they tested was adulterated, and according to the report, it contained 46% of that substance. The Madhya Pradesh government moved only on October 4 when the Chief Minister held the cough syrup responsible for the child deaths and ordered a blanket ban on its sale. Several other states have also banned the product. But the shock does not end there. 3 more cough syrups have also tested positive for dangerously high levels of the same chemical. Samples failed the safety test, reportedly far exceeding the legal limit of 0.1%. These deadly syrups have also been banned. And as the crisis spreads across multiple paths, the centre has stepped in. The Union Health Ministry has issued an advisory urging extreme caution in prescribing cough syrups for children. It has also called for stricter monitoring protocols nationwide. But then, is it too little too late is the immediate question that is being raised. This is not just about these medicines, it's about the questions over whether this is also a systemic failure and who should be held accountable. Is it the Drug Control Authority, the job of which is to detect the contamination in time? Is it the Health Ministry, the job of which is to enforce tighter checks despite multiple past tragedies? Is it the pharmaceutical companies? Some of them continue to operate with quality controls that have been questioned as well. Or is it the pharmacies distributing these syrups? Because this is not the first time this has happened. In 2020, 17 children died in Jammu and Kashmir after consuming a batch of a cough syrup. It contained a shocking 34.97% of that substance. The World Health Organization has linked cough syrups contaminated with the substance to over 300 child deaths worldwide since 2022. One such disaster played out in Gambia in 2022 when at least 70 children died after consuming contaminated cough syrups. A final question. How many more children have to die before India's drug safety system takes the action it's supposed to? The loss of even one child due to negligence, if at all, is unacceptable. 20 deaths is a national disgrace for a country like India, which is regarded as a farmer-driven country. The families deserve answers. The country deserves accountability. And the children deserve justice. The month of September was one of intense activity for the Indian Navy. India's naval vessels made visits to more than a dozen foreign ports. And tonight, we are telling you about how this marks a significant leap for India's maritime diplomacy and outreach and the strategic messaging behind this outreach. First, a backgrounder. The Indian Ocean is the only one named after a country. More than 60% of the world's oil shipments moving through here, almost 40% of global seaborne trade transits this vast area. At any point in time, there are over 50 warships from various countries operating in the Indian Ocean region. These warships patrol the high seas and ensure the smooth flow of trade and commerce, while also upholding freedom of navigation. As a major maritime power, India deploys its naval vessels for bilateral and multilateral exercises to increase interoperability and cooperation. India, in fact, is among the few elite maritime powers that can simultaneously be deployed in the Mediterranean and the Pacific to extreme geographies. Indian ships also go abroad as part of training missions, goodwill visits, patrols across the vast Indian Ocean region and beyond. And India is also committed to being the first responder in the region. India is also a member of the 47-nation combined maritime force, the largest multi-nation naval partnership. The combined maritime force security, stability and prosperity across approximately 3.2 million square miles of international waters, encompassing some of the world's most important shipping lanes. In September, in fact, India's naval ships visited over a dozen foreign ports as part of exercises, goodwill visits and training. In addition to this, multiple warships and submarines remain mission deployed across oceans. The major highlights from September. During September, India's anti-submarine warfare ship visited Papua New Guinea as part of the country's Independence Day celebrations. The vessel visited Fiji on a goodwill mission, following which it made a port call at Australia. Also, India's diving support ship made its maiden visit to Singapore, where it took part in the exercise Pacific Reach. India also showcased its capability to rescue crew from a distressed submarine. India's first training squadron is a fleet of ships where naval cadets undergo at-sea training. Even cadets from friendly foreign countries undergo training on these ships. The first training squadron visited Seychelles and other parts, all in a span of a few weeks. India's stealth frigate, meanwhile, visited Egypt and took part in the US-led exercise Bright Star. Later, the ship took part in a maiden bilateral exercise with Greece. The warship also made a goodwill visit to Cyprus and Italy. In India's immediate neighborhood, meanwhile, a stealth frigate made a goodwill visit to Sri Lanka with regular maritime outreach in the Indian Ocean region and far beyond. India's Navy serving as an ambassador of the country. The Navy builds bridges of friendship, offers support when required, collaborates with partners, enhances interoperability, and enhances people-to-people contact, and builds camaraderie between forces. North Korea has unveiled a new hypersonic missile at an arms expo in the country's capital, Pyongyang. The development coming amid a warning from the supreme leader, Kim Jong-un, that no area in South Korea is safe, claiming North Korea can strike anywhere using advanced weapons, including hypersonic missiles. Take a look. The Nobel Prize in Physics has gone to 3 American scientists whose work is shaping the future of computing as we know it. John Clark from the University of California, Berkeley, Michael Deverett from Yale University, and John Martinez from the University of California, Santa Barbara have been honored for their pioneering research in quantum mechanics. Research that laid the foundation for the next generation of ultra-powerful computers. The Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences made the announcement in Stockholm earlier today, honoring the decades of work that began back in the 1980s. Their experiments on electrical circuits revealed how quantum mechanics can be used in the real world. Their key discovery showed particles can sometimes break the normal laws of physics. They found that electrons can tunnel through energy barriers that should be impossible to cross, and proved that this mysterious behavior could also happen in man-made electrical circuits. This revelation did not just deepen understanding of the quantum world, it also led to an entirely new field of technology and became the basis for building today's quantum computers. The Nobel Committee noted that nearly every modern technology, from mobile phones to cameras to fiber optic cables, already depend on quantum mechanics. But what the 3 achieved brought that science out of the lab and into the circuitry that powers modern computing. The 3 physicists will share a prize of $1.2 million, and their work decades later, continues to push the limits of human technology. With the award announced, the Nobel Week continues. The award for chemistry will be announced on Wednesday, literature on Thursday, while the Nobel Peace Prize will be announced on Friday. The Economics Prize will close the week on October 13. Precious metals and Bitcoin are rising to new all-time highs this year, alongside risk assets like stocks. In fact, gold surged past $4,000 for the first time ever, taking the market value of the yellow metal to a record $27 trillion. This comes as the US dollar is on track for its worst year since 1973, signaling a generational macroeconomic shift. This year, central banks have shored up their gold holdings to nearly a quarter of their reserves at the cost of the dollar. Our next report decoding this for you.
The illusion of the traditional prosperity measures is breaking. Wall Street stocks are up 40%, with over a $20 trillion rally since April lows. AI stocks have been the biggest winners. Gold is trading at new all-time highs, up nearly 50% this year for its best year since 1979. Silver has surged to a record high, up nearly 70% so far in 2025. Bitcoin hit a fresh peak of above $125,000 over the weekend, with $130,000 bets rising. But this is not a reflection of solid global economic growth. It is a flight from fiat currencies, especially the dollar under Trump's second term. The Federal Reserve is cutting rates into inflation, calling it a need-of-the-hour policy. The uncertainty from Trump policies and the ongoing US government shutdown is weighing on the dollar. The US currency is down 10% this year and is on track for its worst year since 1973. The dollar has lost 40% of its purchasing power since the 2000s. That is reflected in central banks' shift away from the dollar to gold in their foreign exchange reserves. Worries over inflation, deteriorating US fiscal health, Federal Reserve independence, and geopolitical instability are raising questions about the stability of long-term treasuries, traditionally the world's safest asset. In response, many central banks are turning back to that barbarous relic, gold. The fortunes of gold and government bonds have diverged sharply this year. That split was highlighted earlier last month. The price of bullion struck a new high, and many long-dated bond yields hit levels not seen in years, or in some cases, ever. US Treasuries have essentially been treading water in global reserve portfolios in recent years. At the same time, central banks' gold holdings have mushroomed, thanks to accelerating demand and soaring prices. Gold has recently surpassed the euro to become the second largest global reserve asset after the US dollar. For the first time since 1996, gold represents a bigger share of central banks' reserves than treasuries. Bitcoin has joined gold in the de-dollarization trend this year. The OG token surged to a new record high of above $125,000 over the weekend. Bitcoin is now the seventh largest asset with a market value of $2.5 trillion. The crypto token's allure is now driven by the macroeconomic factors, including the US government shutdown last week. The government shutdown began on Wednesday. That closed down operations at regulatory agencies and bureaucracies entirely, or forced them to operate on a bare bones budget and minimal staff. The political dysfunction stemming from the shutdown has renewed investor interest in Bitcoin. The OG token is now considered a store of value monetary technology as faith in traditional institutions falters. The move away from fiat is not just a trend anymore, it is the new reality. Business Bureau, WION World is One.
All right, shifting focus for now to these images coming in of US President Donald Trump meeting the Canadian Prime Minister at the White House. This is a crucial visit, of course, coming at a time when the relations between the two sides have been at a low point over multiple issues.
And we're in competition. And the advantage we have is we have this massive market. So it's quite an advantage.
them for a second. Are you planning to invoke the Insurrection Act? And that would be, a very long-standing law that's been on the books.
Yeah, well, it's been invoked before, as you know. If you look at Chicago, Chicago's a great city where there's a lot of crime. And if the governor can't do the job, we'll do the job. It's all very simple. They probably had 50 murders in Chicago over the last 5, 6, 7 months. Many people were shot. And then the governor gets up and he says, well, we can handle it. They can't handle it. They don't know what they're doing. The mayor is grossly incompetent. He's at a 4% approval rating in Chicago. He's at a 4%, lowest approval rating, lower than even de Blasio had, which is hard to believe in New York. I thought de Blasio would always maintain that record, but the Chicago guy is even lower. So I think that we want safe cities. If you look at D.C., you would right now, Mark, you could go out, take your family out to dinner, you could walk right down the middle of the street. There is no crime in D.C. When I got here, this place was a raging hellhole where people would come from Canada, people would come from other places and end up getting shot. Nobody's being shot. The National Guard's been unbelievable. I mean, they are strong, tough guys. You know, we won something at the Supreme Court, which is a big deal, merit. Everything now in this country is merit-based. I didn't think I'd ever see it again. And we have our soldiers are merit-based too, and they're central casting. And they walk through that town, and I'll tell you what, this place is safe. It's beautiful. Now we're in Memphis, and the same thing's happening. You're getting the reports. The bad guys are saying, we don't want anything to do with this. And we're removing many people. In D.C., we took out 1,700 career criminals and sent them back to the countries from which they came, mostly led out by Biden and his people that had an open border policy. And, you know, Canada, you suffered because of that, too, because they'd come here and they'd go into Canada also. So we're like a buffer for that in terms of Canada suffered greatly by Biden and the open border, the policy of open border, totally unchecked, totally unvetted. And these people were, you know, if you got 5%, 2%, now you were getting a lot of bad people. And we now have a closed border. You've done well. Yep. We have a closed border, and it's a really closed border. In fact, for 4 months, I don't even know if this is possible, but the figures were released. 0 people were able to come into the United States from the southern border. 0. And as you know, we've taken a very hard stand on drugs. This is also benefiting you. A lot of we call them the water drugs, the drugs that come in through water. They're not coming. There are no boats anymore. Frankly, there are no fishing boats. There's no boats out there, period. If you want to know the truth, we're saying, does anybody go fishing anymore? The fact is we knocked out, probably saved at least 100,000 lives, American lives, Canadian lives.
All right, so continuing to monitor that meeting where U.S. President Donald Trump once again talking about the D.C. law and order situation, which he calls was earlier a raging hellhole in his words, and also talking about the border issue and the drugs issue as well. We will, of course, keep a close eye on the latest coming in on that meeting. Shifting focus for now, what if the drink that you thought was a healthier choice is actually putting your liver health in jeopardy? Could your daily diet soda or sugary drink be doing more harm than you thought? A study in the United States has raised alarm over non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, NAFLD. Let's break it down for you. This is a groundbreaking new study held by First Affiliated Hospital of Suzhou University in China. It suggests that even a single can a day could raise your risk of a serious liver condition. Even drinking as little as 1 can a day could increase the risk of this potentially deadly liver condition by up to 60% for diet sodas and 50% for sugary beverages. This is a condition where fat builds up in the liver of those who drink little to no alcohol. This can lead to severe complications over time, which includes liver failure and even liver cancer. In the United States, the prevalence of this disease has surged by 50% in the last 3 decades. It has affected nearly 38% of the population. The research, which followed nearly 124,000 participants over 10 years, found that those who replaced sugary or diet sodas with water had a lower risk of developing the condition. It's nearly 13% less risk for sugary drinks and over 15% for diet sodas. And this study underscoring the importance of considering the impact of diet on liver health, particularly as non-alcoholic fatty liver disease becomes an increasingly important and serious global health concern. The liver is one of the body's most important organs, but it's also vulnerable to a range of diseases that can seriously impact our health. Here's a look at some of the most common liver diseases. Hepatitis A and E, viral infections spread through contaminated food or water, while hepatitis B, C, and D are transmitted through blood and bodily fluids. These can lead to long-term liver damage if left untreated. Cirrhosis, on the other hand, a chronic condition where healthy liver tissue is replaced by scar tissue and often caused by prolonged liver injury. And then there is Wilson's disease. It occurs when the liver accumulates too much copper, which can damage other organs. And then there is a condition where the body absorbs too much iron, leading to potential liver damage. There are several other factors that contribute to a liver disease. Viral infections, particularly various forms of hepatitis, are a leading cause. Alcohol abuse, obesity, especially when paired with diabetes, increase the risk. And then there are autoimmune conditions where the body mistakenly attacks its own liver cells, leading to chronic liver disease. And as the experts continue to examine the links between diet sodas and liver health, this research calls for a re-evaluation of these popular beverages and their role in our diets. On that note, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas Tonight. This is me, Molly Kampir, signing off. Thanks very much for watching.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes. And millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Prime Crime is your front row seat to darkness.
Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. To some, it's an extreme ideology. To others, it's the very soul of India. To some, it's rebellion. To others, it's a principle of nation building. Coming soon to challenge perceptions in RSS Centenary Year, Kesariya at 100.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. To some, it's an extreme ideology. To others, it's the very soul of India. To some, it's rebellion. To others, it's a principle of nation building. Coming soon to challenge perceptions in RSS centenary year, Kesariya at 100.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world.